Welcome to SpotOn Profile Basics. Each webinar covers one module within Zoracle's SpotOn profile. Let's join Rebecca Monet, President and Chief Scientist of Zoracle Profiles now as she discusses stages of growth.
Every franchise system goes through predictable stages of growth. If you've been in this business a while, you'll see this. If you've been an employee in other businesses for a while, you can see the different sizes of businesses, the age of a business will determine where they are in the stage of growth. So this work comes from Dr. Neil Churchill and his associate Virginia Lewis. There are many organizations that use similar models, including your big five consulting firms like Deloitte, Anderson, etc. So this is probably a familiar tool for those of you that have been through an MBA program or something of that nature. All we've done with Zoracle is take that logic and put some algorithms to it so you can see where your franchisor is and your prospective franchisee, where he or she fits. So this is Neil Churchill's work adapted to the world of franchising. So as I mentioned before, every franchise system goes through predictable stages of growth. And what you're wanting to do is have your prospective franchisee align with that. So you want your prospective franchisee to fit with where that franchisor is currently and where that franchise system is growing. So we want them to augment or complement the value package of the franchisor is what we're attempting to do here. So let me talk to you about the 5 predictable stages of growth. You will recognize these instantly as you're kind of in your head thinking about the inventory of franchise systems that you're looking at. So we have a stage 1 franchise system. I call it an entrepreneurial system. This is a business where the founder is still at the helm. It is a startup business where the founder sets the pace, manages the business, makes all the decisions. It's a very dynamic business. Typically, it has a handful of employees wearing several different hats. They're overworked, underpaid, and it's oftentimes like chickens with their heads cut off. Oftentimes, they're also not highly financed. They may still be being investors in these entrepreneurial businesses. So what they're looking to do is leverage, position, and fine-tune this product or service that this concept originator came up with. It's a better widget. It's a different niche of a market. But the focus as an entrepreneurial business is on the product. The product itself, whatever it is, sets them apart, makes them different. So typically, what we're looking at as it relates to our prospective franchisee is some of the benefits that relate to them, putting them into an early stage business. What are some of the benefits? Most importantly, it's a first-to-market concept. A franchisee that has the makeup to enjoy a dynamic, ever-changing kind of business will have the benefit of being first-to-market. So oftentimes be able to negotiate better terms, lower entry fees, maybe even some forgiveness on royalties for a period of time. They'll have a huge amount of say in the policies. There are franchisees that love these kinds of concepts. They like something new, something coming up, something different, something where they can be the first and they can have a lot of control, especially if they can negotiate a regional deal for what normally would be a multi-unit type of deal for them. But they're always looking at something that gives them a lot of financial rewards. And certainly a stage 1 or entrepreneurial business will do that for your franchisee. But remember, there are also challenges involved with a stage 1 franchise system. Oftentimes there are limited resources and the franchisor is understaffed. So they may not have strong support in the field or strong training available at that particular time. They are busy still putting some of the administrative pieces in place, registering their business, and making the product the best they possibly can. So obviously a dynamic system with a lot of chaos and a lot of potential for errors, so it's not quite proven at this particular time. One of the other challenges for the franchisor, of course, is very liberal franchise agreements that the franchisor oftentimes later regrets that they have signed. On the other hand, for the franchisee, that is a good fit, that enjoys a dynamic system, doesn't mind not having the kind of support that they're going to get later on down the road, it's probably a good idea that there is some liberal franchise agreements because they're taking a lot more risk than other franchisees down the road. Let's talk about the stage 2 business. The stage 2 business is when the founder of the organization finally gets to a point where he or she realizes they can't do it all. They aren't the best at certain areas of the business. So typically they will bring in a operations type of individual, or vice versa. They'll bring in a sales or marketing type of individual, and there'll be this kind of divide and conquer at that franchise organization where now we have 2 pillars. So we're starting to see the systems taking form as this new operations person, a new president comes in. He or she will be reaching out to the franchisees and asking them for their best practices. And as he gets those best practices, he begins to create systems and processes that become memorialized so we can roll it back out to our next wave of franchisees. So the systems are starting to take form. The product is beginning to be clearer as to what is being sold out in that marketplace. In fact, the product offering, the mix of products, may have changed at this particular time. We have enough feedback from our franchisees that says this product or this market isn't purchasing that, but this other product or this other market is working. So the franchisor begins to change the product offering, maybe streamlining it just a little bit more specifically to what is currently working. We're starting to get a better idea what the market penetration strategy is. Before, it was being peppered out to all possible consumers. Now we see the true consumer and who's going to be a good buyer of that product or services. This is now becoming a systems-oriented franchise system. In other words, we have now moved from focusing as a franchisor on the best widget, the best product, to let's create some system, let's put some foundation underneath us so our next wave of franchisees that come in will have some systems to be able to ramp up more quickly and become more profitable much faster. Benefits to the franchisee. At this point, the franchisor has some market awareness. Now, granted, there's not a ton of these franchises out there at this point, but the name is out there. The reputation is starting to build. There's some momentum. So those early adopters have gone into the marketplace and made some dent in that marketplace. So the next wave of franchisees are not the early adopters. They're that second wave of franchisees. At this point, because we have this operational person in there coming up with best practices, coming up with systems, we're starting to recognize as a franchise system what we as a franchisor bring to the table, what are our core competencies. For some franchise systems, that could be administrative, back office kinds of things. Maybe it's some of the marketing, and now what we're looking for is a franchisee that augments, complements that. We're looking for a sales guy. We're looking for someone that can network. We're looking for someone that has strong financial or technical skills. But we're looking for things that complement. So at this point, the franchisor is starting to take some shape. They now know what they are bringing to the table. They're not doing it all, nor are they expecting the franchisor to do it all. In that early stage entrepreneurial business, the franchisee literally is doing 90% of what's going on, and the only thing the franchisor is providing is the product or service. It's beginning to shift to more of a partnership kind of mentality, which is why we call this a partnership stage 2 business, where the franchisor and the franchisee have some equal amounts of responsibility, and there's a divide and conquer that's truly starting to go on here. Now, naturally, those folks that were early stage franchisees that came in where they had a lot to say about the organization. They could have a say in the best practices. They could have a say in how much they were either going to pay the franchisor. At this point, as the franchisor is putting in some systems and some processes, even some accountability, some reporting at this point, those early stage franchisees could be getting slightly unhappy. They loved having the power and the control that they had early on. They like doing things their own way. That's the way they're wired. They enjoy that. They're pioneers. They're from the wild, wild west. All of a sudden, we're now in stage 2. There's some accountability, some systems, some processes in place, and those early stage franchisees are going, you know what, I'm not so happy about this, and they may be slightly unhappy. Now, this may mean there's a little bit of validation challenges or at least some disgruntledness starting to happen. It also creates an opportunity for some pruning that is going on. Those early stage franchisees saying, you know what, I kind of like the wild, wild west. I think it's time for me to step out. And so there may be some pruning opportunities, allowing the next wave of franchisees to come in and purchase some resales or open up some territory where somebody has stepped out of that particular territory. Let's talk about some challenges with stage 2. I mentioned this resistance to change of a franchisee. They're not wired for rules, okay? They like it the other way. So this is going to start to cause some challenges. There's going to start to be some challenges with collecting royalties and with reporting. Again, the franchisee wasn't crazy about doing that. So there's going to be some challenges with that. So we're going to bring in some methodologies at the franchisor level to have our franchisees do a better job of reporting and do a better job of paying the royalties. There's starting to be a little bit of validation issue. You as a broker, this is something you're going to address when they're calling the current franchisees and there's some validation issues. Position it. This is a stage 2 company. I'm going to show you, Mr. Prospective Franchisee, and I'm going to show you this because you think and act like a partner. You like things that are just enough dynamic but are starting to solidify and become more systematic. You're the next wave. But I'm going to warn you, when you call some of these current franchisees, there's going to be a handful that aren't going to validate well. And let me tell you why. So prepare them for those issues, and they will instantly go, absolutely, I'm not like that other franchisee. This is who I am, and the issues that franchisee is currently dealing with are not issues I'm going to be dealing with. So prepare them as a broker. That's going to be your job. So I mentioned that at this point we have an ops person in there who's automating things and creating systems and processes. Oftentimes early stage franchisees are not crazy about all this automations and systems and processes, so it may feel slightly overwhelming. There's a lot of change that's going on in stage 2. All good changes, but nonetheless a bit cumbersome at this place. At this point also, if this is a concept that's exciting and that is catching on, there may now be a couple of other franchise systems stepping into that space. We've seen that again and again recently in the last handful of years. We've seen that in the elder care business. One stepped in, and boom, within 2 or 3 years, we have 4 or 5 other companies that have stepped in that spot and are taking up the slack because a need has been established. Other businesses do the same thing. That's just the first one that kind of popped into my head. All right, so a stage 2 company evolves, it changes. We got systems, we got processes in place. In fact, they're tried and true. We're now in a place where we can replicate those systems. They're proven, we got numbers to them, and we can see that our next wave of franchisees have ramped up better. We're working out all of the bugs. We're also, as a franchise system, getting much clearer on our value proposition. We know now what we're bringing to the table. We know now what we anticipate and what we expect from our franchisees. And again, our roles are becoming much, much clearer. So we're starting to see some silos building in the franchise system. We now have a VP of marketing. We have a VP of training. We have a VP of sales and marketing, but we're starting to see some silos and specialists in each of those areas. So we're putting in the systems, we're clear on a value proposition, and now as a franchise system, we're shifting our mindset from, the perfect, wonderful widget that we've invented to systems to our focus now is on what can we do as a franchise system to empower our franchisees. So we're going to pump some money as franchisors into recruiting, training, and supporting franchisees. At this point, our franchisor is not just looking at, I got to get as many franchisees in because I'm literally using the entry fee that they're paying to run the business. We are now looking at building residual income through royalties. So we want to look for the right franchisee, not just any franchisee. We want to train them. We want to provide them support. So we're hiring people. We're putting them out in the regional areas, and they are supporting those franchisees. So we're adding solutions. We're adding services, all with one thing in mind, and that is, excuse me, that our franchisee is our customer. So the shift has gone from stage one, where we think our customer is the consumer, to now, as a franchisor, I realize my true customer is the franchisee. My job is to take care of them so they can take care of the end user. It's a wonderful place to be. So some of the benefits to your franchisee. The market is still not overly saturated. There's probably not at this point regional development opportunities or sub-franchisor opportunities left, but there still are some single-unit and multi-unit operations available in strategic marketplaces. They may even be expanding into Canada, into Asia, into Europe. There may be some movement in that direction. So not overly saturated, but clearly the world knows that this franchise system is in existence. I mentioned those early stage franchisees. I'm telling you, if they were early on franchisees, when we move into a stage 3, unless they have evolved, their stage of growth is evolving along with the franchisor, there's going to be some pruning opportunities. Folks stepping down, they've now have great marketplaces. They're thinking about selling them, so some resale opportunities here and some opportunities to exit franchisees that are not comfortable with this stage, or they've been in long enough. They take their money and they go home, because remember those early stage franchisees have an awful lot of financial benefit because they've usually captured much larger market presence. So stage 3 companies, much faster ramp up for the franchisee. We got proven, solid, memorialized best practices, and now we're beginning to bring on franchisees to be part of the advisory panels, part of technical committees, marketing committees, whatever it is. The franchisee is stepping out and taking some leadership role on these advisory panels or on these committees. At the same time, one of the benefits to the franchisee is the leverageability of resources. And what I mean by that is, at this point, the franchisor is reaching out to vendors and suppliers that can help their franchisees. These could be leasing companies, equipment companies, printing companies, insurance companies, whatever it is. They have now created some level of relationship with outside vendors that their franchisees can use those services at a discounted rate simply because they are franchisees. They couldn't do this on their own, at least not at those price points. Challenges that we're experiencing with the stage 3 company. Franchisee retention problems. Guys, if you are showing stage 3 companies, you have experienced this. All of a sudden, we're starting to notice those early franchisees, they kind of struggled through that stage 2, thinking, okay, they still have some power, but by the time they're at stage 3 and there's all kinds of rules, there's all kinds of accountabilities, there's all kinds of reporting, there's all kinds of new systems and processes in place, those early franchisees aren't real happy. Many of them aren't, unless they are going at the same pace the franchisor is going. There are some of us that are true initiators. We do well in in early adopter concepts, and we don't do so well once it's getting a little bit more boring and there's a little more, rules and things to abide by. So there's some retention issues at this level. Now, ironically, this is typically when I see the franchisor, when they're calling me saying, what's going on? Why can't we keep these people? They'll look for a tool that will help them. But as it relates to our brokers, know this. When you're introducing your prospective franchisee to a stage 3 concept, again, let them know this is a stage 3 concept. It's got a proven system. It's got a track record. And give them all the benefits, and also tell them, please know when you call folks, there could be some challenges with validation and retention. Don't be concerned about these, and let me tell you why and explain to them. So we're starting to see in stage 3 attorneys coming on board at the franchise system. In fact, they may be in-house at this point, where they're making sure franchisees are complying. So we'll see some increased litigation. We're going to want to protect our prospective franchisee as they bump into that, what that could be about. So there's increased costs that are going on to the franchisor simply because the franchisee is demanding more services, call centers, help with their leases, money back on remodels. But they're starting to put demands on the franchisor, which is increasing the franchisor's costs and also adding more and more silos. So you're seeing an organization expand, and you're starting to see there's some additional costs that are going on. So they may have 300 franchisees, but their costs are super, super high. So that moves them into what we call the empire or stage 4 business. This is a large organization that has market dominance. They own that marketplace. Now they have so many silos going on, so many specialists, that oftentimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Communication is not going from silo to silo. It's almost as if the marketing department doesn't know what the legal department is doing or the training department is doing. There are separate silos going on and some communication issues beginning. But what we do have is we have incredible presence in the marketplace. These are the concepts that folks come to you and they say, I want, and whatever it is that they're wanting, because they see it everywhere. And you as a broker know, you know what, that may not be the right concept for them. Just because it's out there doesn't mean it's the right fit for your prospective franchisee. Now, the focus of an empire business is to control market share. And they're going to do everything possible to do that, including doing mergers and acquisitions. So if there's individuals in a marketplace that run a mom-and-pop hot dog stand, and a hot dog business has come into that marketplace, they may actually begin to make an offer to that mom-and-pop to convert, to merge, to be acquired within their system. So they oftentimes will buy whole territories of other, let's say, real estate firms or hamburger chains or whatever, and they begin to merge and acquire. That's a great opportunity if someone is in that business already and wishes to merge with a bigger brand. Now, sometimes this is done in a bullying kind of way, and other times it's done in a more, here, come on board, otherwise you're going to get kind of muscled out anyway because we have such presence. So by this time, the vendor and supplier relationships are almost exclusive. You look at your McDonald's, they have exclusive relationships with potato farmers and meat suppliers where they're getting price points that no other business could possibly compete with. So these are exclusive relationships where the vendor is at the beckoning call of an empire that is doing a ton of business. And of course, that is passed on to the franchisee, who is also allowed to do business with that vendor or supplier at those discounted prices. Now, what happens at the empire level, the franchisee and his or her role has changed, okay? In stage one, that franchisee was wearing a gazillion hats. 1 minute, he's hiring and training an employee. The next minute he's selling. The next minute he's doing financing. The next minute he's marketing. He is shifting and moving. He is the business, right? And now we have moved to a stage 4 where the franchisor basically has a cut and paste business. And in this particular place, they're not looking for hunters. They're not looking for people to grow the market share or build presence. They can do that themselves. They're looking for someone that's more of a technician, someone that does what's required to keep that business rolling. So the skill set at this point is not as broad as what we need in the stage 1 or stage 2, or for that matter, even a stage 3 plug-and-play business. So remember, stage 4 is a market-oriented business, and the franchisor will do whatever it takes to grow that market share. I have seen, I'm sure you have seen, a stage 4 empire business actually go around the franchisee and market directly to consumers. We see this with companies such as Marie Callender's, who all of a sudden made their chicken pot pie available at your local grocery store, selling products around the franchisee, because what they want is the marketplace. The franchisee is more a technician, more kind of a deliverer of the product or service, not necessarily a hunter in any way, shape, or form. Stage 4 benefits. Proven systems, right? This is cut and paste, plug and play, put this franchisee in there, they're going to do well. Lots of brand equity and market dominance. This is no doubt a business that knows what they're doing. Strong financials, strong support. There's lots of merger and acquisition possibilities. So if you have people in your marketplace coming to you that want to sell a business, I don't know how many of you do that, this may be some opportunity to introduce them to franchise systems to merge or acquire their businesses. Leverageability of resources, lots of vendor relationships that the franchisee can use. Now, some of the challenges that a stage 4 company has, one of the biggest challenges they have is at this point the shareholder value is being challenged. The cost of running a bureaucratic organization of this is out the roof. So even though I have market dominance, the dividend that is being paid, and usually these are, by the way, publicly traded companies by this point, the profitability is just not there for the franchisor. There's oftentimes also poor relationships between franchisor and franchisee. This is when we start to hear the franchisee or the franchisor talk in terms of us and them. It's no longer that partnership or that we're in this together kind of feeling. It really is the franchisee needs a plug and play, needs an empire where they're basically instructed this is what needs to be done through a day, and they execute. So they execute well, and if they execute well, they make good money. There's also a breakdown between the franchisor and the end user at this point. So they're losing the pulse. They're losing the pulse of the marketplace because they're working more on perpetuating than they are truly connecting with the end user. And because the franchisee is more of a technician at this point, nothing wrong with that, the focus is now not so much on the end user, but just on the deliverable. So the franchisee, as I mentioned before, begins to lose the hunter instinct, going out there and grabbing his own business. So naturally, a stage 4 company at some point will have the shareholders screaming, right? They're saying, wait a second, we're the biggest in the marketplace. What's going on? Why are we not making money? And at that point, it's not uncommon for a franchise system to look at doing something different. They go into a renewal place. What will happen frequently is the system will break up into smaller pieces. So a system that had 7 or 8 different concepts, like Sendent did a few years ago with their hotel chains, their travel chains, their rental car chains, their real estate chains, their tax chains, they begin to break those things up into smaller, more agile franchise systems where there is a closer relationship with the franchisee and a closer relationship with the end user. So there's a repositioning that begins to happening and a rebranding as a split up or do things a little bit differently. Maybe making some all corporate locations. They'll buy locations back and they'll all be run by corporate, or they'll spin off and turn some concepts into licenses or some other business model, which is why we call this a hybrid. The system will actually have some licensees, some franchisees, some corporate locations, and they may have broken that system up. Now, at this point, they're leveraging the relationships that they've currently built and relationships that they have built with vendors and suppliers. Oftentimes, they will sell off a piece of the business to one of their larger vendors or suppliers. So the whole focus at this point is a renewing, a new breath that kind of comes into the system. We saw this with Hewlett-Packard in South Africa and in Europe when they rolled out their printing concept. Hewlett-Packard, a major business that all of a sudden took a piece of their businesses, broke it off, and turned it into a franchise. We saw this with Sears many years ago when they took their roofing and their appliance business and their painting business and spun it off into licenses and franchise systems. So some of the benefits to a stage 5 business is clearly lots of brand awareness, but a stage 5 business is the best of a stage 4 or 3 business combined with the best of a stage 1. It is now truly entrepreneurial, intrapreneurial. It's a combination of, I got this massive brand with financial backing and support, but at the same time, as a franchisee, I have lots of room to innovate, and it's much more entrepreneurial. But I have the support. I have clearly defined products, a clear brand that's out there, and there's still a lot of flexibility. I'm coming in as a franchisee. I have flexibility, and I have a massive brand behind me. How perfect is that? And, of course, I have the leverageability of the resources that the franchisor has put in place all this time. Some of the challenges, a lot of systemic changes. It's dynamic again, maybe not as crazy as a stage 1, but it's dynamic again. So for a franchisee that's not comfortable with that, we want to be cautious putting them in a stage 5 business. Increased marketing and support costs are happening because we're spinning off businesses. We now have 5 marketing departments instead of a single centralized marketing department. We have 5 HR departments instead of a single centralized HR department. So we can see that the cost for the franchisor does go up. But at the same time, they're more nimble, they're more agile, and they're getting more in touch with the end user. Compliance and regulation issues, because the rules are changing. Oftentimes the franchisee is not quite sure what they're supposed to be doing. All right, so review. Stage 1. Stage 1 franchise system is product-oriented. It's dynamic. It's a perfect place for a franchisee that enjoys risks, enjoys creating his own system, enjoys innovating, and has broad spectrum skill sets. It's not a good place for a franchisee that needs systems and processes and lots of support and lots of training. Not a good place. It's a dangerous place. They're going to flounder. Stage 2 is systems oriented. This is a partnership kind of business where franchisor is working in tandem with the franchisee, borrowing their best practices and memorializing, and the stage 2 franchisee gets the benefit of the boo-boos that the early stage franchisees did. Stage 3, a franchisee-oriented system where the focus of the franchisor is on providing services and support and training. Whatever it takes to get that franchisee profitable and successful, the franchisee is going to put in the effort to do that. Stage 4, massive organization that's gone through stage 3 and in this place is now looking at acquiring and merging with other businesses so they can be dominant in the marketplace. Stage 5, a renewal going on, a breaking up of a stage 4 company or reorganization of a company so we can bring back some of that entrepreneurial blood, that hunter instinct is starting to come back. So that's a stage 5.
To learn more about the SpotOn profile, take the assessment yourself by clicking on the link below. Or reach out to us directly for your 30-day free trial.